I have two individuals. On my far right is Honorable Dan Manzo from Makueni. Many thanks, sir, for joining us. As well as Honorable Yusuf Hassan from Kamukunji constituency right in the capital. Thank you very much for joining us. So, Dan, let me start with you.
Yes.
You've seen that development yesterday from IEBC. We do expect their press briefing any moment from now on how well they prepared for the polls. Let me just begin with this. Do you think IEBC, as they are currently constituted, are ready to give Kenyans a credible poll?
Well, there has been an effort to rectify some of the mistakes which were identified by the Supreme Court, and we hope they are going to rectify all of them. We are just in a minimum effort. We want to see the people who participated in committing election offences and giving fraudulent results face the law. And the first person to hand them over to the DPP is the head of the IEBC or the chairman, Mr. Chebukati. So we have seen minimums, but we expect more so that by the time we conduct the polls, we are not repeating exactly what we did. And I do agree with the judges. If we just repeat the same thing, then it means we are going to repeat the same judgment. And it means Kenya will not have moved. So for Kenya to move and for the polls to be ready, some people have to give way, either by way of by resignation,
names and expect them to be prosecuted.
You know the judges ruled per our request. You know, when you go to court, you have pleadings. The judges don't go beyond what we have requested. We had applied that the results were unconstitutional because of illegalities and the breaking of the law. We did not go under election offences, nor did we cite it. So judges would not have gone beyond what we had presented to them. But there are indications, so they ruled within what we presented. And now there are indications and there is overwhelming evidence, which is now at the office of the DPP. With the IEBC or inside IEBC, aided. Some of them don't really work for IEBC, aided in stealing of elections, in breaking the law, and therefore they must face the law. And for that matter, IEBC must cease dealing with those particular persons.
So you expect to see heads rolling?
Yes, quickly. And if the DPP doesn't, there are plans to do private prosecutions. We have notified him before, and further notices will be given to him today by midday, so that if he doesn't take action within a week, then we'll institute private prosecution to those particular individuals. The moment you begin the prosecutions, whether by DPP or privately, the court can direct, or it is automatic expected, that these particular persons are going to resign or cease dealing with the IEBC.
Honorable Yusuf, I'm sure you'll agree with me that there's a lot of pressure on IEBC right now.
Absolutely, but I think let's get the record straight, that the courts did not find any fault with any individuals. They didn't name any individuals. They found irregularities and illegalities. And to a certain extent, in fact, the courts helped the NASA case because NASA did not present concrete evidence to support the case that they put to the courts. And therefore, to now argue that IEBC needs to carry out a witch hunt against certain individuals, in my humble judgment, is a mistake. What IEBC should do is to prepare itself to do its constitutional job. It is the only body empowered to do the elections. It should not take instructions from any individuals or any political parties. And it must make sure that those errors and irregularities that has been cited by the Supreme Court are corrected. And Chebukati is the boss. The buck stops with him. He needs to run this institution in such a way that in the next days that are remaining until the 26th of October, they're able to correct and improve on the problems and remove some of the problems they've had, and to be able to conduct credible elections. This is what all of us, that's what every Kenyan wants.
Yes.
And it is not something that is specific to a particular political party.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, what we want is free, fair, and credible elections. And I'm sure in this particular case, as the courts have not faulted President Uhuru Kenyatta. They have not questioned the results as such. the 8 million plus that President Uhuru Kenyatta got there. And I have no doubt that if there was a credible and free elections, we would get
and of course, there are those, especially from the opposition, who are saying, there's need for IEBC to clean its house before conducting the rerun. We're going to talk about that shortly, but allow me to cross over to Parliament once again, where senior political reporter Duncan Khaemba is on standby. Now, Khaemba, good morning. I understand the IEBC, or of course, we expect a briefing from the anniversary towers, from the IEBC chairman, as well as some of the other commissioners. What do you expect from that briefing?
Well, we understand IEBC might be having a communication, but we are not so sure whether it will be a news conference or they'll just send a news dispatch to media houses. But I think the biggest news that we might be keeping tabs on is basically the Attorney General's news briefing that is scheduled for 11:30. According to the invite that we've received, it says that the Attorney General will be seeking to explain the constitutional provisions in line with presidential elections and the period thereafter. Remember that after the final ruling that was issued that particular day, of course, Senator James Orengo, who is a senior counsel and who was the lead counsel for NASA, said that we could be glaring at a constitutional crisis in the event that things are not done in accordance with the law, or things don't fall in place until 1st of November. Therefore, some are saying that the Constitution is silent on what happens after 60 days. What will happen if we'll not have an election on 1st November? Does the president's temporary incumbency end? Does it continue? Some are saying that the president's incumbency, or him being a lame duck president, ends on 1st November. Thereafter, he becomes a normal citizen. The president yesterday said that he will remain president until when he hands over power to another elected and sworn-in president, so to speak. So there are a lot of conflicting issues on way forward, and I think these are some of the issues that the Attorney General will be seeking to explain, and therefore we'll be following to know exactly what else he will be communicating. But big on the agenda of that news conference is clearly, as he has stated, constitutional provisions in line with presidential elections and period thereafter. So, Yusuf, that is what we expect to get from the president's legal advisor, or the government's legal advisor, Professor Dr. Githu Muigai.
Khaemba, once again, allow me to return you back to the IEBC. That those demands that NASA has made, they've termed it as irreducible minimums. Do you expect the IEBC chair to address those demands made by NASA? And understand they're supposed to engage in a meeting with some of the stakeholders, both from the two main protagonists.
Yes, NASA has given what they term as the minimum irreducibles, their 10-point agenda, but IEBC had already effected some changes, appointing what they called the project team, which NASA termed as cosmetic changes, but they still insisted on key individuals they say must not be anywhere near the fresh presidential election. Of course, there is a news alert that has just gone this morning from our sister paper, The Standard, that IEBC's legal counsel, Praxidis Torore, has offered to resign. We are yet to know whether that is a true position or not. So already that it means that if indeed it's true that she has resigned, then she might have, we can say she has succumbed to pressure from NASA. And if she has resigned, probably the rest might take that cue. Now, we are not so sure whether IEBC will still ensure that it follows all the demands as put forward by NASA. Remember that this is an independent institution that should not be subject of command to any player, any political player. But again, NASA being the petitioner, they are saying if there are issues that are led to the nullification of that presidential election, then there would be nothing will be called a fresh election if the same systems remain in place, if the persons they accuse of having been responsible for bungling that election still remain in office. So it's a thin line. If IEBC doesn't effect the changes, then NASA will say there is nothing that has been changed. If IEBC bends to NASA, then perhaps people will say that IEBC is losing their independence. So we are not so sure how this particular one will be panning out. And as I've said, if indeed it's true that Praxidis Torre, IEBC's legal counsel, has actually offered to throw in her towel, then it means that most probably the rest might follow that order, and perhaps NASA might say, yes, at least this is what we wanted, because there are specific individuals that NASA says they should not be part and parcel of the fresh presidential election. Yusuf.
Many thanks, Khaimba, for that update. Of course, we're going to link up with you once those briefings, one from the Edge and the other one from the IEBC starts. And of course, we're definitely going to bring it live to our viewers. Now, Honorable Yusuf, we've seen the Director of Legal Affairs, that is Torre, tendering a resignation. So the main question is this. You know, there are those who are observing now that we might see more resignation from IEBC because apparently they're succumbing to pressure from NASA. So where will that leave the independence of the electoral body?
Well, I think that is just purely speculation as we sit here. That one individual has opted out doesn't mean that, in fact, others will do so.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, as I had emphasized earlier, is that IEBC is an independent body. It has its mandate clearly cut. It has laws and regulations to follow, and it must be seen to be independent. It must be seen above the political fray. It cannot be seen to be bending to the demands of one particular side in the contest. NASA is a party in the election process, and therefore it is wrong for NASA or any other political party to dictate to IEBC. And that's why I think Mr. Chebukati, the chairman, should take his job very seriously by making sure that he acts according to the law. He has been given the resources by the Kenyan public. The taxpayers have paid. The money has been given. The 10 billion shillings that he needs for the next election is going to be passed by Parliament as soon as it is brought to Parliament. And I believe he can do his job very well if he follows the law and the rules and regulations that have been set up for IEBC to be able to do its job. All the other aspects are purely speculation and pressure that has been brought onto IEBC to bend to the needs of a particular party. And in this particular case, I am not so sure whether NASA really wants to participate in the elections, because the demands they are making now are unrealistic. In the short time that we have, it's simply not possible to overhaul the whole IEBC. But and nobody can do that at this particular moment. And therefore, the big question is NASA ready to participate in these elections? And is NASA ready to work peacefully through the constitutional system in place to participate in the elections?
And now, Dan, we've seen some, failures by IEBC from the Supreme Court judgment. For them, first of all, they announced the results without all Forms 34A in place. Yes. They also failed to verify what was sent to the polling stations. And there's so many, reports from the Supreme Court, and they've not yet found anyone culpable. So where will that leave the chairman of IEBC? Because everyone expects him to, sack people or suspend some of the officials there.
There are different levels of the offenses or the irregularities or the breach of the Constitution which the court found. And though the court particularly has not pinned down anybody, because we did not plead such pleadings, nor was there a trial of such, nor an argument in court over that. First and foremost, we expect the IEBC to now follow the court order and to rectify what was wrong. Even if someone has not been pinned down by the Supreme Court, there are many other laws which are left to make sure that someone takes care of what they may have wronged or pays for it or faces the law. What is most important, and that's why we say you could not know who really won the election. According to our own ancients and the results we got and what we knew was in their computer system, is that President Uhuru Kenyatta lost to Raila Odinga with 1.5 million votes.
Okay,
and that is our position.
That's according to the opposition. Let's talk about.
There's one more issue which
let's talk about the demands. Jubilee is saying these demands are not realistic and they cannot be implemented within this short time frame that we have. Do you agree with that?
No, first of all, the IBC works, in this case, has now two stakeholders, the Jubilee Party and the NASA coalition. It also has reduced these stakeholders to the temporary president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and the NASA presidential candidate, Raila Odinga. Those are the stakeholders. So at any particular time, IBC has a duty to make sure that those stakeholders are happy and are satisfied with what is happening. Just a few days ago, the Jubilee had given their list of, people working with the IBC who they did not wish to participate or to assist or to work there. They later on, changed their mind, but you can see they were uncomfortable. So there's nothing wrong with us.
And I think this is where the issue of independence comes in. Right after the ruling, IEBC, of course, NASA said they're not going to get involved in any other election up until IEBC is reconstituted. They went ahead, formed a committee. Jubilee came forth saying that, these people are bipartisan, they are known to have some political stand. So where will that leave the electoral body? Don't you think they're between a rock and a hard place at this moment?
I think it is very clear from what Mheshimiwa Mwanzo is saying is that NASA continues on that same destructive path of demonizing the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, denigrating it, carrying out a smear campaign against individuals in that organization, to be able to make it a kind of a rejected organization in the eyes of the NASA supporters. So this is why I think NASA is not serious in going to the election. And my brother says that they won the elections. But look at the numbers. The election of the 8th of August was very smooth, well organized, and the most peaceful elections that I have ever taken part. I've taken part in 4 elections. 16 million Kenyans voted without any problems. To a certain extent, IEBC did its job very well. Now there are certain aspects that have been highlighted that IEBC needs to do. But if you look at the results again, Jubilee has got the majority of parliamentary seats in the National Assembly. We have bigger numbers than them. Jubilee has a majority in the Senate. Jubilee has a majority in the gubernatorial contests that have happened. Jubilee has more MCAs several times. So this is a clear indication that, in fact, the largest number of people who voted in the 8th of August 2017 election voted for Uhuru Kenyatta. There is no question about it. So the question...
Do you agree that is a true reflection?
The question now is whether NASA accepts an election.
First of all, there are very many computer manufactured members of parliament. And that's why we have over 50 election petitions against the members of parliament.
That applies across the divide, right?
Yes,
Both Jubilee and NASA.
Jubilee has more.
But he has been elected.
Yeah, Jubilee has more.
Were you elected fairly?
I was elected fairly, and there's no election petition against myself. Therefore, I'm sure once these cases are concluded, the numbers will change. And I can assure you, as soon as Raila is elected president, you will be surprised how he will soon have a majority in the House. So you cannot be using that narrative.
Speaking
to have the election is willing to create chaos. That is going to be a constitution. When we when we know our constitution is very, very clear that the sitting president stays in office until an election takes place and a candidate is elected. So it is very clear here that NASA is now building up a case to create that crisis.
But at the same time, we should agree.
We would not
I'm sure we're
accept
in
it to
agreement
happen.
that IEBC also has its own shortcomings. And let's listen into part of the ruling that was made by the Chief Justice David Maraga while issuing that full judgment at the Supreme Court.
Have we, in executing our mandate, lowered the threshold for proof in presidential elections? Have we made it easy to overturn the popular will of the people? We do not think so. No election is perfect, and the technology is not perfect either. However, where there is a context in which two houses of parliament jointly prepare a technological roadmap for conduct of elections and insert a clear and simple technological process in Section 39(1)(c) of the Elections Act, with the sole aim of ensuring a verifiable transmission and a declaration of the result system, how can this court close its eyes to an obvious and near total negation of the transparent process?
Honorable Yusuf, coincidentally, that is also one of the demands being made by NASA, that IEBC should carefully scrutinize how they're transmitting results. We should not see a situation where these Forms 34As don't correspond with Form 34Bs, and all this confusion surrounding how these results are being transmitted. Don't you think it's prudent for IEBC to make sure that this time around they get it right?
Yes, I think we expect IEBC to come out, now that they have set the date. They must come out to tell us how they're preparing for the elections and to convince everybody, including the doubters, that they are ready and willing to do the elections according to our constitutions, our laws, and the rules and regulations that we have set for them as Parliament to be able to do that. In addition, we are going to give them the resources to do so. So there is no reason whatsoever for IEBC not to be able to do its job, just as it has done well in the transmission, in the election of the parliamentary seats, the Senate and the National Assembly, and the gubernatorial, as well as the MCAs. It can do a presidential election without any problem, but we now expect them to spell out how they're going to do that.
Yes.
But to set unreasonable, unachievable demands at this particular moment, for me, is to place an obstacle in the work of IEBC to be able to carry out an election. And the only reason I think that is going to happen is because a party to the election is afraid of elections. Now, the question I ask is, why are they so much afraid of the will of the Kenyan public? Why don't they present themselves to the Kenyan public and have a peaceful election? Yes.
Before I come to you, Honorable Dan, there are memos, that the IEBC chair wrote to his CEO, asking very valid questions. Up until now, those answers have not yet been made public. Don't you think this is part of the problem as well, from IEBC for remaining silent all this time?
Well, IEBC has problems, obviously, internally. It needs to sort itself out. It needs to put its house in order, and it needs to assure the Kenyan public that it can carry out these elections in the date that it has set.
I think that is what NASA is also saying.
No, but NASA is demanding that unless IEBC does what it wants to do, A, B, C, D, it is demanding. It is demanding. If you don't do that, we are not going to have we're not going to have an election. We're going to have a chaos. We're going to have constitutional crisis.
Is NASA raising unreasonable demands?
No, they're not unreasonable. We stand for the rule of law. I'm also asking Jubilee, why do you want to protect a person you know very well is a criminal suspect and has aided in arriving at fraudulent results?
That is defamation.
Yes. Why do you want... I say suspects.
Defamationary statement.
I say suspects. These are suspects. And you want to make sure that these suspects, no action is taken against them. Because you need them again to be able to obtain another fraudulent results. And we are saying, clean up the system, we are all happy. We are more than ready, and we know in a clean system, in a free and fair elections, we will win.
It's absolutely the case is that
very
in
briefly
fact,
before we take a break,
Jubilee is the biggest loser of this thing.
Yeah.
We won the elections fairly and squarely, and that's why we want IEBC to put its house and act together so that we can again repeat the victory that we had on the 8th of August.
I think basically you're saying the same thing. If we've all agreed that IEBC has a problem, that it's about IEBC, you know, it's about time that they put their house in order as well. Anyway, we'll continue with this conversation. It seems you're not going to end this conversation now, but we're going to take a very short break. When we return, we're going to have